So this is the Public Order Act 1936. And I found this through researching the Tumultuous Petitioning Act, finding out when it was repealed in 1986. And I ended up finding out about the previous Public Order Acts. The most recent Public Order Act 2023 is what Priti Patel is mainly supposed to be responsible for, trying to prohibit protesters and so forth. Now this, I think this might be the first one, or it's one of the early ones. It could be the first one. And this section here is actually something that I intuited. I really intuited this myself from Facebook groups. A lot of times when you haven't broken the law or done anything wrong, you know, you will end up getting, removed from a group, right? Well, sometimes groups have rules, but none of those rules are the law. And sometimes they don't have any rules, and sometimes the administrators either stop you from posting or commenting, or even remove people from groups, or even remove the whole group. And sometimes, a lot of the time, it's just for no reason. And there's nothing you can really do about it, like if you're in person or in real life, or the thing is, once they put these blocks on, you can't even complain, particularly if they block you on Messenger. So you haven't got any legal... You can't even use the law, because in order to bring civil proceedings, if you wanted to take someone to court, you have to have their address. And on Facebook and Messenger or on YouTube, a lot of the times, they've just got a messenger and a screen name, and you can't find their address, so you can't write to them. And a woman. I mean, I don't have anything against this woman, but she had a group, and that group was there to discuss trees and saving trees from the council to protect them. It was there for transactions and the debate and discussion of saving the trees. And it had everyone's opinion and statements, photographs, videos, evidence, council planning objections. It was basically the local community's archives of evidence, casework, statements regarding saving the trees, right? And I had a complaint against the council, so that evidence was critical. Now the woman took it down, but she didn't remove me from the group. She just took the whole group down. So I was like, well, I've got this claim against the council, and I need that evidence, right? So I'm like, well, I really need to subpoena it, or I should do. And how do you fill the form in to the court if you want to subpoena a witness? You need their address and name to put it on the form, so the court can issue them with it to give over the evidence, right? This is legal procedure. You can't do that on Facebook and YouTube, because Mark Zuckerberg set it up so you can't even speak to Facebook properly. And you definitely can't do anything fast or quickly. It's an obstruction to lawful due process. Now, this Public Order Act 1936 has got this section 6, but actually, they base it from it's actually rooted from this Public Meeting Act 1908. But it says here that provides that any person who at a lawful public meeting, well, a lawful public meeting definitely is one that's not breaking the law or against the law. And in the right to petition, they cannot stop people from having meetings when you serve petitioning purposes. And when you actually are attending the meeting and facilitating it through the 1688 Bill of Rights, right to petition, that all commitments and prosecutions are illegal. So it definitely is a lawful public meeting, particularly when it's over public matters. I mean, on YouTube, what I've noted now on YouTube is the section where you can put comments and discuss things. It's called community. It's actually called the community section. So the community section definitely is public. There might be some arguments about Facebook when they call them private groups. Well, not all groups are private, but they call some of them private groups. But saying that, you can request to join it. And in many groups, what it actually is, you might have like Save the Trees or Save the Planet or whatever it's called. The thing is that many of these groups are there when you get in them for a public meeting. It's actually a public meeting. And it's actually over community matters, planning applications, complaints against the council or government or petitions, right? You can't call it a private meeting when you get in there, it's the community are all in there and all the community have requested attendance. You could call it what you want, but when they're discussing matters of objections against the council and it turns out that the community are in there, it can't be a private meeting. So, Zuckerberg's terms are questionable. In fact, it is a public meeting. When members of the public are in there having a meeting about a community matter and referring to it as a community matter, what can we do to protect this community? And then you find out everyone from the community is in there. That's not a private meeting, right? We can call it what you want. And if they're actually deciding to petition the council under there, if you're in a meeting and then they suddenly say, right, petitions, right, we're going to petition this council, you immediately got a right to sign that petition and be in that meeting. There is absolutely no excuse Zuckerberg has got. That is not a private meeting. When someone says, oh, we're going to do a petition to the council and everyone in the group sign it, you can call it what you want, but at that point, he's declared that it is for petition purposes, and clearly the public are in there. So it's a public meeting in a private group, so it's still a public meeting. So whoever in a lawful public meeting acts in a disorderly manner but only in a disorderly manner of the purpose, right? Remember that this is a lawful meeting, and under the right to petition, all prosecutions against you are illegal, so really you couldn't really break the law. So notice the wording on this. It says if anyone acts in a disorderly manner, but only if they're acting in a disorderly manner, and that manner is for the purposes of preventing the transaction of the business for which the meeting was called. Well, so that means that if they're acting to prevent the transaction of business for which the meeting was called, so that means if you're trying to disrupt the meeting, obstruct it, or prevent anyone from taking part in it. So if you are preventing people from talking, they can't transact. They can't give evidence. If you can't give evidence or give facts or statements or have your opinion, you can't speak. And if they remove you, you're not in the meeting. So you've been prevented from your transactions for the purpose for which the meeting has been called. So the chairman or the administrator or moderators, if you yourself are not trying to, it says here, if you're trying to stop the meeting from continuing, that's what it says in a disorderly manner for the purpose of preventing the transaction of the business, right? Well, that includes for any person who's intending. So just because you swore, that you could swear, but you wouldn't be preventing the meeting from continuing or preventing anyone from taking part in it, right? That wouldn't be, if you swore or were even rude, right? That you aren't stopping anyone else from having their say, and you aren't stopping anyone else from putting evidence forward, right? But if you remove them or don't let them give evidence, right, then they can't transact with the meeting. So that is what it's actually for. And under the right to petition, really, ironically, they know that really, all prosecutions against you are illegal. So, they only raise disrupting the meeting if it's preventing other persons from transacting. Now, if you don't have a block button, right, and if someone else says something, right, and everyone can read it, you're not actually stopping that other person from speaking, and everyone can still read what they put, right? So it's even if you swore or said something distasteful or non-relevant, it wouldn't really be hindering anyone else's participation or attendance, right? Unless you were like, you'd have to be going out of your way, spamming loads of things or whatever. But as long as you are, you say something that's relevant, someone can read it. Really, only the administrator and moderators are in a position where they can remove people from transacting further in the meeting. They can push buttons and remove anyone from further participating or transacting. Now, that would be disrupting the meeting, because if you come to a meeting with something that people need to know that you found out, or a legal point or information that they really need to know, and if the administrator doesn't like it, let's say, for example, they didn't really want even though they were chairing the meeting, they might not really want the action to be successful, for example, or they just might not understand what you said or the information you put, but other people might understand it. But just because they don't understand it doesn't mean that other people don't understand it. You've got a right to speak. So for the purposes of preventing the transaction of the business, well, it does just mean business for commerce. It just means for the matters of which the meeting is called. So, if it saved the trees. Now, I want to put the example for this for the Colchester Council Watch YouTube channel, because that Colchester Council Watch YouTube channel is very, very, very good example. Because what's happening is it's the purposes for which the meeting has been called is actually helping other people to engage in the process of going to meetings and councils and helping advise people and working together to educate and inform each other. So on YouTube, that Colchester Council Watch, they are attending a meeting online virtually. And Colchester Council Watch, they're putting videos, she's putting videos, and I am meeting with her because she's on the screen and she's imparting information to me, transacting information of which is critical. And then I will put a video and I will respond to her. So we are meeting online, facilitated through YouTube. And we are talking in the comments, right? That is how we can, it's a YouTube channel. There is no Facebook. So the only way that I can meet with Colchester Council Watch currently is by speaking to them, meeting in their comments on their videos, and meeting on their community page on their channel, using my channel, right? So who would disrupt that? Who would, for the purposes of preventing the transactions of which that we are meeting about, Colchester Council Watch, who is intervening in that? Well, it's Neil Mohan and Paul Groves. They are removing video channels so you cannot meet with these people. You cannot attend. And they're even doing it across their whole channel. They're actually doing it across all of YouTube. They're doing it like, they take one of your channels down and then they take them all down, right? And they say what you're doing is circumventing. But you've got a right, particularly when it's over a political matter as well, because a lawful public meeting, the thing is, you haven't broke the law. Now, if you say YouTube policy says you can't do this or that meeting, well, when you're using the right to petition, at the end of the day, right, it actually says a lawful meeting, so it's not against the law. It is a lawful meeting. And if you are attending that meeting through an account, right, like my account that's been removed, then I can't attend that meeting anymore. That's my account. So we are actually meeting through YouTube, and they actually do provide community pages. It says that together incites others to act. So, Paul Groves is even inciting, Neil Mohan is inciting Paul Groves and his staff to disrupt those meetings by removing people. It says they shall be guilty of an offence. This is crime. This is a criminal offence. Right? And we're talking about people who are just behaving or acting normal and just talking, imparting information. And what you're getting are these admins and moderators, they're reading things, and because they themselves, either for whatever quirks, personality quirks, they just don't like what you said, I don't agree with it, it might be completely relevant to the conversation. And other people might have even said, wow, thanks for this is great, valuable information. What they're doing is they are beating, well, I don't want to say they were childish, but what we're finding is we've got these very, very strange, odd personality quirks in some admins and moderators, and they've got these buttons where they can just throw people out the group when you haven't done anything wrong. And really, because it's YouTube, you're blocked from justice. And I've even found that if you want to take civil action against them, you haven't got the redress. So, I mean, I've got a court case, and I need to fill in information to subpoena material from the group for the court case. And not only people remove certain people, they even end up running away with the evidence, taking everyone else's statements with them. Because when you've got a group of people who have all contributed statements about council planning and applications, right, they're very serious, because you need that data in order to submit it to the council. It's very serious, right? This is crime. And this is not third-party copyright. This is not Warner Brothers. This is an actual criminal offence. This is like Paul Groves or Neil Mohan going and headbutting someone, right? They haven't got immunity from headbutting someone. This is a normal standard criminal offence. It's not third-party copyright civil claim or anything like that. This is like a criminal offence. It says, shall have effect as if the following subsection were added as follows. If any constable reasonably suspects any person of committing an offence under the foregoing provisions of the section, he may, if requested to do by the chairman of the meeting, so that's whoever's in charge of the meeting, require that person to declare to him immediately his name and address. Well, what happens if it is the chairman? This is the thing. What happens if it's the person in charge of the meeting, like the administrator? Really, the administrator now is the word that we have for a chairperson. To have give him his name and address. And if that person refuses or fails to declare his name and address, or gives a false name and address, he shall be guilty of an offence under subsection and be liable on summary conviction, therefore to a fine not exceeding 40 shillings. And we don't have 40 shillings anymore, but this is actually still in effect as the law. This is still in force, so I don't know what the equivalent of that would be now. And if he refuses or fails to declare his name and address, you see, or if the constable reasonably suspects him to give him a false name and address, the constable may, without warrant, arrest him. So he can be arrested for this. So I think that Paul Groves and Neil Mohan and Mark Zuckerberg are guilty of this. They are encouraging and facilitating, inciting admins, pulling people from meetings when it is a lawful meeting taking place using the 1688 Bill of Rights, right to petition, and they are they're preventing the transaction of business to which the meeting was called, right? And when we're using the right to petition, we've actually got the right to convene wherever. Now, you might say that Paul Mohan, and it doesn't, in here, it doesn't say that, it doesn't even say that. You see, a lawful public meeting can be held in a private house, because where would you have it? So if you have got a private house, right, and you invite people round for a public meeting, well, you need somewhere to have it. It can be anywhere. You're actually officially using it for a public meeting at that time. So, really, it's been declared, for a public meeting to take place. So, I think that I believe that on YouTube, right, he's called it community section. He's actually declared it as a community section. So how can it be private? And it's actually not private because I've made this argument before. You don't need an account to watch YouTube. It's not private. It's actually YouTube is privately owned, but it's like a bus station, you know. It's open to the public. You can. In fact, I'll tell you what, right? If you're going to a bus station and have a meet, you could all stand there and have a meeting in there and just talk, right? And it can be privately owned. And I think that in law, once the meeting, this law, if the meeting is for public purposes, like, you know, to talk about a planning application, right? This actually prevents any person from disrupting that meeting, really. So the fact that people are on YouTube having meetings, Zuckerberg is still, and Mohan are still committing an offence by removing people from those meetings or stopping them from transacting in them. According to this, and this hasn't been repealed. I'm off to go find this Public Meeting Act 1908 because that'll be really interesting. But as far as this goes, this law is definitely here to make sure that if you're having a lawful meeting, and you know, like you say, if it's for an objection or something like that using certain legislation, then you are having a lawful meeting. And if it's abiding by the law, you're not breaking the law. I believe that there's something happening with the Facebook groups where they've been people these admins and moderators have been given too much power and too much authority, and a lot of them aren't trained or mature enough to manage groups. And then sometimes there are like 8 or 9 administrators or moderators, and they've all got different opinions. And a lot of the time, you don't know what's happening. And some people are suspecting that, you know, whether it's this 77th Brigade or 77th Battalion, whether or not there are other parties or anonymous, actually removing people when it actually wasn't any of the admins. It was like some other party or entity that's hacked into it, and then we don't know. So they might just be pulling certain people's participation, which actually would be illegal. Now, if you were the Labour Party or Conservative Party, you see, Rishi Sunak and the current Conservative government doesn't really want all these political parties to have any rights, not even turn up in public at many places. If you were having certain meetings and Facebook groups and it could actually be beating these parties, how do you know whether or not they're using anonymous style hackers for these other political groups, government groups, when they're trying to, defeat certain people or pull certain people's participation out? This actually was happening. This was happening. This is what that 77th Brigade or 77th Battalion were doing. And this is what that Big Brother Watch investigated. And they admitted it. They admitted that they were taking down certain content. Now, the thing is, you can actually participate in a meeting virtually you can have a meeting where someone puts a video, then another person responds to it and puts another video, then another person replies to it with another video, right? And you meet through video messages, right? So if they pull you from being able to do that, that's unlawful. So this law, I'm quite certain that once Facebook has declared that, people are converging together on it, people are definitely engaging in meetings on there, and within Facebook's rules, you can have meetings. You can use YouTube don't have a rule where you can't have public meetings using their platform. In fact, they've got the community section. So even though it's privately owned, they're actually facilitating for use of public meetings. So if you're doing that, if you can meet virtually, then you have to comply with the law that governs those meetings, right? So this is where their policy is subject to annulment, because once they are acknowledging that there are members of the public having meetings on there and they are okay with that, then that means they've got to comply with this legislation. And this legislation says that you can't disrupt or intervene those meetings. It's actually a criminal offence. Now, their policy, if it seeks and serves by any clause to attempt to remove people from meetings, right, no matter what they've done, particularly when they haven't broke the law of England or America, it's lawful meetings. Remember that, before Facebook created the policy, there's a law. What's lawful and what's not lawful, right? And at the point when they enact their policy, right, when Facebook and YouTube are drafting their policy, right, and it says a lawful, they're allowing meetings. People can meet on there. It's not against the law. The law, federal, state, and foreign law. Now, at that point, this is the law, right? This is the law. You can't pull people out of meetings or disrupt those meetings, particularly when it's for political matters. So when you pick up a pen and then start writing a policy, and that policy would allow you to pull people from those meetings or disrupt them, then that policy is illegal. Because what you're actually trying to do is you're trying to break the law. Now, you can't change, if you want to change the law, you try and get the government to change the law. This is a law that's in force. Mark Zuckerberg cannot make this is the old argument, isn't it? The old, what Elon Musk has been talking about, cage fight or whatever, You can't make, you can't make it, you can't have a policy that makes it, legal for you to kill someone in your group, right? Although, you can have these boxing matches where you consent to hit each other and so forth. But I don't think anyone would consent to that. And it comes to a point where I don't think they can, I don't think they can, try and use policy intellect to make it illegal to kill someone in a private group. Because, therefore, why should they be able to use a intellectual policy in an attempt to take away a right like this so they can pull people out of meetings? If they could, then effectively, what you're saying to me is that if you've got a clever policymaker, he could effectively have a platform that was privately owned where it was lawless, the law didn't apply. That means that he could effectively write a policy where not one of the laws apply. And then he could go further and say, well, seeing though I've taken no laws apply to anyone on my platform. We're all free from the law. And then he could go further and say that, well, I might as well also, I'll write myself out of the tax law. I'll write a clause where I don't have to pay tax, and I'll write a law where I don't have to comply with safety, health and safety. I can break up meetings. Now I don't have to comply with health and safety. We'll scrub those laws out. And now I don't have to comply with, employment laws. We'll scrap those as well. We'll write off all the employment laws. What you've ended up with is then someone like Mark Zuckerberg, who has got a platform, or Neil Mohan, that no law applies. Well, if he can do it, why doesn't he? Why don't he do that? Let's see him do it. Why don't he just say, my policies are so clever that no law applies? And the reason why he doesn't want to do that is because then there wouldn't be any laws on there and people could do what they want. Now, you'd think that, well, that would be a genius because he's just liberated everyone, right? Oh, I've just liberated everyone. But he likes the law because laws tell people what to do, right? Look at Warner Brothers, look at copyright policy. Why don't you just say, well, there are all these ridiculous laws over third-party copyright claims on Warner Brothers, and, they've got themselves... Why didn't they just... If they were so clever with policy, why didn't they just say that, well, none of that applies, so, everyone can use what they want on our platform, right? Then you'd get Warner Brothers suing them. Well, if they... But why would Google want to support Warner Brothers and Universal Studios? Why don't they just support the public and say, hey, I've got a platform where you can just post what you want. Screw Warner Brothers and Universal Studio. Screw them, Well, either they like helping out their buddies, their pals, Warner Brothers, Universal Studios, because it's all Black Rock Vanguard and they like making the money and they want to, and that's one of the purposes of YouTube, and is to make money for those companies, and they're not really on the side of us. Why don't they just liberate us from Warner Brothers and Universal Studios? The fact is that I don't think they can. Because actually they can use it. Why have a country? I don't think that they're on some remote island that is not part of another country. The problem with these big corporate entities is that they think that, they are somehow legislators. But they're not. They're not legislators. But we've got to a point where they're acting like they're legislators, right? You can't... At any point where you have people engaged in a meeting that is taking place, that is lawful to the law, you can't... You see, because then... You see, what Neil Mohan and Mark Zuckerberg and Paul Groves are doing is they're kind of behaving like some of the admins in the groups are behaving. Like, some people haven't done anything wrong, but they just don't want a certain person to participate in the meeting, or they don't like them, or they don't like or understand what they say, or the thing what they say, so they just remove them. And that's what this law is to prevent, right? But what Neil Mohan and Mark Zuckerberg are doing is they're kind of doing that, but using the policy. They're using the policy in the same way that the admin are using the group controls, right? In order, we like this, we don't like that, you can't say this, you can't say that, when there's already set laws in place, right? And some of these meetings, remember, are using the 1688 Bill of Rights. So this is just yet another... I mean, we've already got the statutory instruments 2007 with Class F, which is for the advertisements for the petitions, where you have to share them, and where we share them through Standing Orders 145A of Parliament, which compels documents and information. It's actually compelling documents to the public to view, to see them. This is just yet another law. This is another one. I'm going to check up this Public Meetings Act 1908 as well. It's probably been repealed, that one, but this is still in effect, although it's got shillings in it. It's quite funny because it's got a fine not exceeding 40 shillings, but they can be arrested. And the constable can make them give their information over. But the problem is, on a Facebook group, you can't actually speak to the person, and the police don't have an account. When the police view Facebook and YouTube, they aren't logged in because they don't have accounts for investigative purposes. They only use it like everyone else does, like just viewing it, and so they can look and view. They don't put comments on there, and once they find certain information, then they contact YouTube, right? So YouTube really is the one who's obligated to give the details over if someone's removed you from a group, right? That means that in law, the police actually have a responsibility to act and possibly even charge someone if you've been removed from a group when you haven't done anything wrong, particularly if it's a meeting over something like planning or so forth. That means that the police have got to act. Now, they're probably not going to, because the thing is, they've got a lot more serious offences to attend to, like, assaults and stabbings and thefts, right? In fact, a lot of the time that I've reported anything online, the police have really not really been very helpful. Yeah, I've seen a guy with the police turn up at his house from Facebook where he got abused on there, and I don't know how he got the police to go around. He must have really pestered them to go after this person. But over things like Facebook groups, I don't think you're going to get them to do anything, because they're only focusing on more serious things. But it's getting serious, because when the meetings and when the groups are over matters that are serious, like, opposing the council or something important, or, things like that, then it's serious, because there's a group of people who are trying to do an action to the council or the government, and you have some information which is legal information that is going to help them, and someone in the group, doesn't understand it, or has just got some gripe, even though you haven't broke the law, you're not doing anything wrong, and then they're removing you and pulling it down. This is the exact wording on here is, right, if they're acting in a manner which has a purpose of preventing the transaction of the business or for which the meeting has been convened, from which the meeting was called, right? So they're removing you and preventing you from helping the rest of the group or saying something that's important. And that actually, in law, is a crime. And I knew it was. It felt like it was. I'm like, I haven't done anything wrong here. I'm in a group. I've got some information. I put it on there. I'm trying to help them with legal things. And then someone goes, wow, this is great, thanks. And then an admin comes and turns off commenting, or deletes it, or even removes you when you are actually assisting or helping. Now, this is like character quirks of people. There are really stubborn people out there. And Zuckerberg and YouTube, they've really encouraged that to flourish. And it's become extremely authoritarian. And there's a guy called Mwaya Smiley as well, who's got it's not for council meetings. He's involved with political parties, but it's just for, like, ancient heritage sites and stones. He's like that. He removes people for just, like ask someone what their name is or something like that, and he removes you. That guy, Mwaya Smiley, is a criminal. He needs to be prosecuted. He's Scottish. He's from somewhere around Glasgow. He's in, like, some befriending group, ironically. He's the last person to befriend. I really thought I was being abused by that person. He's a criminal. According to this law, that man is a criminal by how he's acting and conducting himself, it could even, the meetings could cover, if people are coming together to, share photographs and so forth. It doesn't have to be like a petition or a council objection. I think it's setting out freedom of speech terms for meetings, but, I don't know if America have got this, but if there's anything that helps to clarify or confirm the First Amendment freedom of speech, then this has got to be it. Although this is in England, right? But this is 1908, so where it's originating from. This is an offence. This is a crime. This is not like, it's something obscure or abstract. It clearly, this is to prevent people from disrupting, obstructing, or removing people from meetings, or preventing meetings from continuing with the transactions, the material that people have brought to it to submit and discuss. It's to enforce people to be able to meet and exchange material and transactions without intervention, particularly when they haven't broke the law. You can even bring the 1688 Bill of Rights into it, right? And it actually can. I don't think that too many people disrupt the groups. You do get some spam accounts on there, but I found that it's mainly one or other of the admins. And the problem is when you start to get 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 admins, they've all got a very different idea of, what they like, what they don't like, who understands what. And some of them have just got a very just atrocious management. It was criminal management. They're acting criminally. This makes it an offence. And on Facebook, it's actually Facebook claims that it's giving power to administrators, but everyone's got buttons now for if you don't want to read something. So there's no need to have one administrator in a group if you don't have to. If anyone can, doesn't have to want to talk to another person, whatever. But when it's for a political matter, there's certain things that it's important, and you've got a right to lay a legal fact on the table or something, right? And people make their own judgment of it, an opinion, without it being pulled off and removed. So, that's what this is a law. And I actually believe that on this law, at least in England, I think that YouTube are breaking the law and Facebook are breaking the law. Because if you've got people on there meeting, then you can't remove them. So on that basis, at the point when YouTube is about to draft its policy, right, based on law, it can't, because as it makes that policy is at that point illegal, because it's if they're going to allow people to have meetings on there, then it's illegal for them to pull people out or censor information from those meetings definitely over political matters and so forth. So, I think that they're criminal, at least in England, maybe not in America, but once you understand this, if there is a similar act in America that someone's overlooked, then they need to find it. And this is why I think that I truly believe now that what YouTube... Loads of people believe that what YouTube does is wrong. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. spoke out about it. Jordan Peterson spoke out about it. Jimmy Dore spoke out about it. It just feels wrong when, you're not actually breaking a law of your country and you're actually engaging with other people on an important subject, and you need to converse and lay impart informations, transact, and you get pulled. And you're like, well, it just feels wrong. It feels like, and the worst thing is you feel helpless because this big entity, YouTube, they don't want to talk to you. They've got automatic responses. You put in very coherent, comprehensive responses, and then they just automatically reject it. It all feels wrong. It feels like some very, very big, nasty machine that is chewing you up and spitting you out, and there's nothing you can do about it. You feel helpless, and the police are meant to intervene, right? But so what they say, Biden's given them some immunity. That immunity is only for copyright purposes, right? It's not. We're talking about when YouTube actually is setting up. And at the point they write that policy, I believe that it intends, if they, with the purpose of preventing the transaction of business. Well, removing someone from a group, creating a policy, right? Creating a policy where they can remove you for doing things that aren't even against any law. That sure is going to prevent you from transacting with the rest of the group, for sure. If they're making loads of rules up, which, you know, aren't even illegal, you know, things that you're doing, that's saying that, oh, if you do these certain things which aren't even against the law, we're just going to start, you know, pulling you out of your transactions and meetings, then surely that has a purpose. Surely that serves a purpose for preventing you from engaging in meetings, you know? Surely it serves a purpose. It serves YouTube the purpose of, or, you know, how do they say, oh, we can remove your account for any reason or no reason. Well, doesn't removing someone's account for any reason or no reason, it prevent for the purpose of preventing transaction of the business? Well, that's one reason. It says they can have any reason. So one of the reasons then could be for a purpose of preventing the transaction of business. So effectively, they could claim that one of the reasons, when they can have any reason, one of them, if they wanted to, could be for the purpose of preventing the transaction of the business, as says sex out in here, for which the meeting reason is. They're claiming that this here, which is illegal, that's a reason they can use. They can use that. It's not illegal when they do it. Oh, we can remove your account for any reason, including even if we wanted to prevent the transaction of your business meetings so you can't engage in them. We can remove it for that reason. We don't want you to be in that meeting, or we can have that. Rubbish. That's illegal. What they're actually doing is they're making everything which we're doing, if they choose to by their policy, sort of against either, if it's not against the law, it's against their policy. And anything that they do or want to do, well, we can do anything for any reason. So what these corporate entities have ended up creating, what happens to someone when they're so successful, they've got all the money in the world, like Mark Zuckerberg, billions. What happens in the mind of that person, and what things do they pursue? What do they go after? And what these people go after is they can do absolutely anything, and we can do nothing. What these people do in their policies is they attempt to, if they can't get it put through the law, through government, they get it put through their policy. Oh, we can do anything for any reason or no reason. And you know, even though that's the law, it doesn't matter because we've got this other law of ours, and you can't do anything, or anything that you do, we can, you know, they're effectively, they want no law for them and beyond what is the law for you. Not even the law, but the law and a lot extra. And that is absolutely fascist. You know, you get to a point where these people, that is not what you're brought up to believe is a society as a child, civilization. It's absolute total power. And this is when you get people like, you know, Grant Shapps and, you know, Keir Starmer, Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak. They're supremacist, absolute, that they're interested in absolute power and absolute money as well. There's no point having absolute power if you ain't got the money as well, you know, else you can't afford anything. So this is it. We need this law enforcing, and it's the police who are actually supposed to enforce. But I don't see us getting any enforcement for it, you know. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can, at least in England on YouTube and Facebook, there's something you can do about it in the law in this country. This has got to carry over to America. What they're doing in America can't be lawful, And I know that RFK has already had a legal case, but there are more arguments that you can add in. That there are plenty more legal acts, legislation, clauses and basis that you can add in to fill in. And they can't, in England, in the United Kingdom, at the moment they started drafting their legal terms and conditions, they've got to have been breaking the law, because this prevents them from writing those policies when it comes to people engaging in meetings virtually online. This prevents them from pulling people out of those meetings. They're not allowed to. It's illegal. Particularly if those meetings are ones that are using the right to petition and, you're publishing your own material through the right to petition. It's meant to be enforced through Standing Orders 145A3 as well from Parliament in order to share the information. So,